A couple of weeks ago, Shaquille O'Neal asked animators to please submit a completed cartoon about him for free for his new show, Shaqtoons. Now, what he promised in return is that if he picked one of these cartoons, he would pay them $500. Now, this really sucks, and he got a lot of trouble really quickly because of that, and he actually raised the price to $10,000, which still really sucks, but watching all this happen, it made me wonder, should you really enter animation contests at all? So I thought I'd make a video about it. Well, let me give you the short answer to that question. It really depends on who the winner is, because when it comes to a contest, the winner is not just you. Hey there, welcome back to Surviving Animation, your guide to making it in the business of cartoons. Today's episode is actually sponsored by the Ottawa International Animation Festival and its business convention called TAC, or the Animation Conference. Now that's going to take place on September 25th to 29th, and I'm going to be there, so I'll tell you more about that pretty soon, but for now, let's actually talk about the animation contest and should you enter them. Alright, when it comes to an animation contest, the big question really is this a gamble of your time, or could this possibly be motivation for something really good for you in the future? Anytime you enter a contest, you should know that what you're doing is you are essentially working on spec for the hopes of some kind of inflated returns. So if you're going to be working on spec, if you're going to be working for free essentially to win something, the big question comes, how do you want to use your time? Now, a lot of people think, why should I try to enter a contest? I mean, really, am I investing my time for free for this gamble that I might win? Well, you are, but I will tell you that if you're trying to do anything new, kind of an original concept or original idea from scratch, it usually always is an investment of your time for free. I mean, that's the sacrifice you have to make if you want to try to put something new out there in the world. Now, this isn't for everyone. I mean, I think if you're a professional, you're working in the field, you are probably saying, hey, listen, I just want to get paid. I'm not going to do anything for free. I'm not going to give away all my ideas and all my hard work for nothing. I totally buy that. I totally agree with that. And I think there's a lot of people, that's the way they're always going to work. And if that's the case, I think you should just get a job and work, on someone else's show. I think that's just the nature of the business if you don't want to take the risk of trying to do something out there on your own. But I think when it comes to contests, maybe there's a way that you can get the best of both worlds. And what I mean by this is, if you're doing a contest that has something original in it, in a way, you could possibly consider that contest as the first part of your own sales tour. There are situations and there are types of contests that you can enter your material, and if you can find a way to retain ownership, it's a great way to try to launch. And hey, if you win with that first one, that's great. And if not, at least you're developing the material to use for other broadcasters and other distributors once the contest kind of rejects you. The other way I think a contest could be good is if you try to think of it as something that maybe has a low risk or a low kind of investment of your time up front, but there's a big high upside, even though it's a less likelihood to happen. I think you should go for it. Maybe there's a contest out there that just is, do a character design or something like that. And if that's easy for you to do, doesn't take too much time, it might be worth it. But let's go a little deeper into this subject of contest. And to do that, I want to explain the types of contests out there so it can help navigate everyone and organize kind of the contests that are available to everyone. So I know of 4 kinds of contests. The first one is called the Pitch Us Your Original Idea one. I've seen this a lot. When I was at MTV, we did this. And essentially the idea is, come bring us a show for scratch, and if we like it, we'll buy it. I think you should generally avoid this. I don't think it's a great thing to try to pitch an original show for a contest. If you have something that's truly good and truly original, why not just save that for a professional meeting? I mean, if you put all the work into it, you've got a vision for something very, very compelling, don't waste it on a concept, unless it's actually something super easy. I mean, if it's a quick pitch, it's an easy pitch, it's something you came up with the day before, why not? So that's my advice on pitching an original idea style of contest. All right, the second kind of contest that I know about is the Send Us Your Completed Animated Film. Now, a lot of festivals follow this format. That's kind of what the whole festival thing is about. I say if you see a contest with a really good prize and the submission requirements are a completed film, go for it. I mean, I think that's really what you've worked hard for, and if the work is completed, usually it's either going to picked or not, and what have you got to lose, so to say. But if you do actually get picked, I would say negotiate hard. I mean, this is possibly months or years of your work, of a lot of people's work, for the fees, the exclusivity, and the ownership. Should you be lucky enough to win a completed animated film contest, just make sure you negotiate hard. Okay, the third type of contest I'm aware of is the Shacktoon style, which is do spec work for possible fees and exposure. As you can probably tell already, I think completely avoid these. I think these are the kind of contests that are predatory. They're made with broadcasters who have some idea that maybe they can get a big flood of new ideas in. It's just not really a good way to think. It happens a lot. What can you say? I would avoid these. So the last type I think is the show us your talents or portfolio contest. I mean, these are the kind that actually I think you should go for. These are the kind that if it's just show us your existing work or let us hear your voice or show us your character design portfolio, there's nothing to lose there, and the worst that can happen is people can see your work. So, all right, now that you know the kind of contests that are out there and some of my ideas, I think it's important to understand who are behind these contests, because there could be a type of contest that's good for you, but if it's the wrong kind of backer or it's the right kind of backer, that can really affect how you decide to get involved. So let's talk about who backs these contests. So generally there are three types. They're the broadcasters and distributors, they're the festivals and governments, and then they're the industry-specific companies. So I'm going to spend a little time talking about each of these. All right, let's talk about the broadcasters. Now, if you're talking about a big company or a big broadcaster or streaming network, there's going to be a lot of upside on winning these contests. These are national platforms, international platforms, but because of that, I think you should be the most skeptical. This is a chance where if you win, something great could happen. But if you win and you win under the wrong circumstances, this could be a big wrong step in a very public environment for you. So the two categories that these broadcasters tend to do is either there's like a talent hunt or kind of like, the cheapskate side. And I think that the Shaquille one is really the cheapskate side. If you look at the Shacktoons, I mean, these are actually the companies that are part of TNT and TBS that are part of, essentially the company that makes Shacktoons. I mean, Warner Brothers Animation, Adult Swim, Elation Studios, and Rooster Teeth. I mean, if they're not doing the animation, why should you be doing it for cheaper? And worse off, do you really want to kind of be a scavenger to these people who work in the industry you might work with one day? I wouldn't do it. So I think that's not a good situation for you to be working with a broadcaster. Now, that doesn't mean that all broadcasters are bad or distributors are bad. There are some really, really good programs. Like a contest through the Nickelodeon Shorts program is really good. I think it's kind of a mentorship program. If you were to win the contest to get a Nickelodeon short, I think it's really good because you get to work with people in there and essentially learn how to be a filmmaker. And about a year ago, actually, Cartoon Network had a great contest in Africa where they were actually promoting African talent, talking about the African situation in order to get more African voices on Cartoon Network Africa. So I think that's really great. So that's the kind of broadcaster, distributor type of contest promoter. So the next type is festivals and governments. Now, festivals and governments, their contests kind of try to play a longer game. I kind of think what they're trying to do is not so much give an individual a prize, which actually tends to be a little bit less and have less exposure. What they're really trying to do is support the overall animation and film industry. So that's why I kind of tend to like a little bit more of these festivals and governments, because there's usually a city or a nonprofit company or a country who actually wants more animation in its area. And so therefore, part of their efforts is doing these contests to attract a lot of attention. So again, festivals and governments, pretty good way to have a contest because their motivations might be aligned with you as a long-term professional. All right, let's talk about the types of festival and government contests you might see, just to kind of give you a little more context. One, there's the completed film contest, which I talked about before. Inside of the festival and government contest is usually maybe the open pitch or speed dating kind of scenario. So at these festivals, there might be a whole contest where you can put your name in a hat in order to meet with 5 or 6 broadcasters at that festival. That's really good because it gives you a lot of face time. It's also a little bit rushed, so it might be kind of a high-stress situation. And in the case of Ottawa, there's the Pitch Fest competition where actually the people who are pitching have this live form of like 300 professionals, and it's a really good way to get your stuff out there. If you like the TV show Shark Tank, it's a lot like that, but it is a high-pressure situation. So the only downside of the Open Pitch Fest competition, even though you're going to get the money there on the spot, is you better be good, because if you're not good, you're going to get roasted live. So that's a bit scary. Okay, so now that we know the types of people who do these contests and the festivals and the governments and the broadcasters, let's talk about the last type, and that is the industry-specific sponsors. So in this case, I'm talking about the animation production companies, I'm talking about the software companies, or possibly the colleges, universities, or for-profit educational facilities. Now, these are sometimes not the front face of the contest. They usually are the person behind or the logo behind. But what I really like about industry-specific sponsors in contests is that they're really there to own your work habits. You know, they really want to get you to use their products and services. They're really not out for your intellectual property. So in a way, you both win. If you give them exposure and say, hey, I won this contest from Toon Boom Software, you get money, and they get more kind of their fingers into the industry, more of a user base to use their product. So in a way, I think that kind of contest is a really aligned set of interests. Okay, so we've went over a lot of material today, so let me just kind of give my basic summary of this. And I used this PowerPoint version today because there was just so much information, so I wanted you guys to be able to see it, maybe pause it, look at everything, so sorry for the change of format. Anyway, the summary of this whole video is that there are a lot of kind of contests out there with a lot of different backers. And I do think it's possible to align your interests with some of those contests if you really think about your situation, the amount of work you have to do, and the people and companies who are backing that contest. So you can really get into the details of these and say, hey, this one actually really works for me if I win or lose. On the downside, there are some predatory contests that you should avoid. I think the Shacktoons thing was really bad. And I think there's some contests out there that are out to get you. So I think just watch your back, analyze them carefully before you submit all your precious ideas and your good talent. There may just be a contest out there that is doing the thing you're already doing. So if you happen to be recording your voice every day and there's an animation contest about voice recording, why not just submit? So that's my feeling. And in general, I think it's your time and your ideas. So however you want to spend those or do those, it's up to you to choose wisely when you get into any of these contests. Okay, that's it for today's episode. That was a lot of information packed in there. I hope you enjoyed it. I do think contests are a big part of how a lot of people break into the business, stay into the business, or find some immediate jump in their stature. So I do suggest you give some of them a try. And until then, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.